Hello and welcome to the Successful Encore Career Podcast program, sponsored by Employment for Seniors. I'm Carol Ventresca, Executive Director of EFS, and let me thank our many wonderful sponsors who support this podcast program, including Nationwide Insurance, Central Ohio Area Agency on Aging, Age-Friendly Columbus and Franklin County, Thompson Hine, Rise Smart, and Circle270Media. So for those of you who have listened to us before, I am turning the table on my co-host, Brett Johnson of Circle270Media. Over the past 2 years, Brett and I have talked to many individuals who have moved from one career to another, pursuing their encore opportunity. Well, today I am putting Brett into the hot seat, as he has also successfully moved into a new career. Brett moved from a long career in radio broadcasting and sales to open his own company as an expert in podcasting, helping many organizations throughout Central Ohio utilize this great new media method and technology. So, Brett, welcome and thank you for joining me today.
Sure, it wasn't much of an arm twisting.
There you go. We have more fun in our sessions here, and so Brett and I do a lot of laughing in the background. So
it's amazing that we've kept it fun for a couple of years now, but that's a good thing. We look forward to the equipment being set up, and we're ready to roll.
We do. And for everybody who's been listening, we've had a great time. We hope you have learned something new from all of our podcasts. So thank you again for joining us. Okay, so Brett, let's get started. First, let's review your background in radio and media and the lessons you learned along the way. What were the accomplishments that you reached over the years and that would eventually help you with your career change?
Well, I started back in 1983. I was still in high school in radio, so I've been in radio the whole time. So with a variety of positions at a variety of radio stations in a variety of markets. Eventually landing in sales, marketing, and advertising. That was for a better part of my career for over 25 years. I just needed stability. I was on air initially, and that's you could walk in one day and they say, we want your key because we're changing format.
Right.
You can't raise a family around that scenario.
Right. Everybody thinks the folks in the front of the mics or in front of your TV screens get paid a lot. And that's not necessarily
true. Your job is on the line all the time. So sales is a bit more steady. Let's put it that way. You always have to sell advertising no matter what the format is, no matter who's on the air and such. Right. So, through that experience of being on air, audio production, and then into sales, I learned to be a good listener, planner, and that led to long-term relationships with my advertising clients. My what's called attrition rate was actually pretty low because I did a good job in listening and what they needed to do with their advertising and their marketing. And through listening, heard many of them talking about marketing differently, about their marketing efforts and what they wanted to do in the space. And a lot of them brought me in to podcasting because they had heard about it, and they were looking at different forms of advertising, and they wanted to control their message differently than just a 30 or 60-second commercial. So that got me into looking into this space and led me to where I am right now.
Wonderful. Yeah. So, and as you and I have talked over the years, I know you have a long-term relationship with the vendor, the clients who do advertising with you, and for those of us who know, who are listening, who know Employment for Seniors, we've become aggressive as sellers of our services because of what you taught us. And so you took your lessons and have taught other people in terms of sales, and now you're doing the same thing with the podcasting. Right. The other thing I wanted to mention too, if I understand this correctly, radio is not stagnant, but it's a pretty narrowly focused medium.
Correct.
And so when you look at TV, there's a lot going on. There's an incredible amount of stuff going on internet. So podcasting kind of blends all of those together when you start pushing those podcasting into various other social media, into the internet, into websites, that kind of thing.
We're becoming so accustomed to listening and watching content when we want.
Right.
Where radio still has its place, but it is once it's aired, it's done.
Right.
You can't go back in time to hear that commercial again or that song again,
right.
Which is the uniqueness of radio. It's a companion and such, but the message and the opportunities with podcasting much different, and it's a different approach than just writing a 30 or 60-second commercial.
Right.
Now you're creating a long form, whatever how long your podcast is, but it's a message that can resonate much stronger
Right.
at the time that the listener wants it available to them.
And that's a good point, because even with, like, if I've missed a TV show like a Today Show or something like that, and the so-and-so was interviewed, I can go back online, find it, listen to it on my computer, but I have to go through all those steps.
Mm-hmm.
And with radio, the same thing.
Right.
You go back and listen to something, but you got to go through all those steps of finding it. With podcasting, it's right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Brett, one of the issues that we continually discuss with our clients is to know and understand their transferable skills. You brought strong transferable skills to your new company. So can you discuss your evaluation of such skills, how you utilize that knowledge in your discussions with new clients?
Well, this is going to be a shameless plug, but I learned a lot from producing this podcast.
Okay.
I really did. Being a part of this podcast actually helped me to start realize the transferable skills that I do have, and it confirmed that I have them as well too. I mean, whether you noticed or not, a lot of episodes I'm nodding my head either internally
Right.
or physically doing. It's like, okay, that confirms that I'm on the right track and such. So I think again, this is not the purpose of this podcast, is to, give us props for, creating the successful Encore Career podcast. But I do believe we have some great content that, whether you're learning about yourself or you just need confirmation that you're doing it the right way, we have that here. And that helped me a lot to go through it. And that maybe it's not even necessarily has to be our podcast, but there are other forms of content that you can listen to and watch that affirm what you have, the skills. And I guess I had a lot of them, but it's one of those how to use them. I can list them in communication. I've got analytical skills, working with my clients to analyze what was the problem with the marketing campaign.
I ask you every month, okay, let's talk about the statistics for Encore Career.
That leads into problem solving then.
Right.
Leadership. That was a big thing on my part too, is that I was a sales manager for a short time, so I led a sales team, and that had those leadership skills that I had to drill down and go, what did I do right with that?
Right.
And what did I do wrong? And remember those good things and bad things, of course, so you don't repeat them, of course. Information management skills, know that I can disseminate information properly and succinctly to clients that I'm working with. Project management, that's again, those campaigns put together, but in what I do now, it's a larger project of opening mic to recording to publishing. That cycle thing. over and over again. And technology literacy.
Oh, yeah.
That to me was not a huge curve, but I knew I had to learn it because this is technology heavy career path, being podcasting. So I knew I had those skills of just recognizing them and being comfortable, like, I know what I'm doing with this. I'm okay.
Well, I think that's a good lesson on those of you who are listening to podcasting is, if you take one thing away. And I think you and I both have taken at least one thing away from every podcast we've done.
Most definitely.
I mean, we've had incredible guests who have talked to us about Encore careers and interviewing and all those kinds of things, and I always learn something new. I'm sort of sitting here thinking back when we first started working together, and you were teaching me how to sell employment for seniors to get those sponsorships.
Right.
And then I think I taught you a little bit about, okay, Brett, we have to make this document something that they're not only going to read, they're going to understand. So, we were helping each other in those, in where our skills lie.
Right.
So,
for sure. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So, when you were looking at this career move, were there opportunities that you pursued to support the career move?
Looking back, networking was probably my Achilles heel. I was bad at it. And I'm not saying I'm great at it right now, but I tried it, but felt I was not very good at it. But I also didn't have very good teachers. I didn't find teachers to teach me how to network. And again, I'm going to go back to our Encore Career podcast of learning. I learned to network a little bit better through our experts that we brought on about networking.
Right.
And kind of get it now that it's not about me, it's about what I can be for the person I'm talking to.
Right.
It's not networking, it's more connecting. So I think I'm doing that better, and maybe a bit more because the pressure's on me to do that because I own my business versus I was representing a business at a networking event that, okay, I can swing and miss many, many times and it's not going to hurt me. I just was never given the guidance when I was in broadcasting on how to network, how to not come off saying, hey, I work at a radio station, I sell ad time, we should talk. Because you have really bad ads on other stations, or if you ever thought about using radio, that's not what it's about.
Right.
It's about presenting yourself and what can I do for you today?
You know, I think networking is one of the most significant things, particularly for older adults, for mature job seekers in their job search, and it is difficult.
Yeah.
I always say that my 30 years at Ohio State taught me to be a networker because bottom line, when you're in a large bureaucracy, you can't get anything done unless you start to know all the people around campus. And as you're asking them for favors, they're also asking you for favors too. It's just, and that's really what networking is, that lifetime connection.
Yeah.
It's not a one-time connection. If you don't buy my ad, I'm not going to talk to you anymore.
Right,
That's not it.
Yeah.
So networking is really for those of us who are inherently nosy. We are curious. We want to know what's going on with other people, and being a good listener.
Right.
And I think doing these podcasts, we've had to do as much listening as we've had talking. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, amongst them too, I did the networking up to, and I tried a lot of different networking groups. They come in different flavors. They really do, whether it's, I'm not even going to, they're just too many to explain how they work. But I joined a couple of mastermind groups that, unbeknownst to me at the time, really turned into something that laid a good foundation for me, because it became a base of knowledge and accountability.
Right.
I had to the next meeting do this, or the next meeting do this, or they were connecting me with different opportunities or software or tricks to the trade of being an entrepreneur that made that transition easier and helped me propel that way. And I still connect with those people that I've now moved on from those mastermind groups. They've just dissolved. That's the nature of the beast. Usually they just kind of dissolve because of time constraints and such, but I still am connected with those people in one form or another. So that in itself was a different type of networking, I guess, but more of a planned monthly or biweekly meeting that you did online, and you had to bring something to the table in regards to what you did from 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago to get your business to where you want it to be today.
Right. Well, and then so to take that all back to my original question, the networking is important, and what it's not just that you're collecting information, but then in your career move, you're bringing all that information out to your clients. So you're giving them opportunities and options that they may not have had before. For your particular career, it's in media marketing, but for those of us who have gone through other career changes, mine from Ohio State to employment for seniors, I brought all of the employers I worked with at the university to employment for seniors, just a different population of clients.
Right.
So it's the same kind of thing. So, okay, wonderful. Well, so to my next question, mature adults often have a variety of reasons for changing employment. There could be that they want to do a larger jump into a business, into owning their own, some other level of career fulfillment, or it could just be financial need. There's a reason to do a change in employment. But there are many barriers in creating a company. And, they say that older adults do better at creating companies, but I would think age still could be an issue out there. And did you feel any of that when you were?
I didn't really feel the age enter in my mind. I guess maybe because I countered it with knowing, walking into this field, I had to combine background of marketing and audio production and quality, or simply radio. That was actually to my benefit. And I had others around me telling me that too, that they saw this, you bring something unique to this career path, to this industry that is not there right now, and it's your radio background.
So you had something that sort of counterbalanced.
Yes.
Because podcasting is cutting edge technology. So I'm, when you're looking at the podcasts on online, you don't always know who's behind it.
You don't.
So you don't know if age is an issue.
Right.
But but so your background. So that goes back to your transferable skills. If you have a strong, compelling work story, you can bring that into a change in career.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So as you just said, the technology is heavy in this career path. I mean, lots of hardware and software options. You've got, as you remember, when we got our technology, when we first started making our wish list of what we wanted to buy, you got microphones, audio board mixers, digital audio workstations, hosting platforms, promotional marketing via social media. And that's just the tip of the iceberg that I could come up with in like 1 minute. The initial challenges that I did face were to get very comfortable with a computer. I mean, I thought I was already comfortable with it, but that was just using some software. But this pushed me even further to understand how social media works.
Right.
Understand the software that's behind, not necessarily building that social media, but to use social media in the most efficient way and all the other things that back that up. I did a tremendous amount of what I call night school, that I'd work 9 to 5 and then my second job 5 to 9.
Exactly.
So, in that night school, I educated myself with best practices, listening to podcasts, reading articles from leaders in the medium, all after work. And that did go on for about a year. I mean, not necessarily every night, but I dedicated a few hours every day to this, moving forward, because I knew this is where I was going to go with it. I wanted to absorb as much as possible. So my challenges so far have been in this career path as a podcast consultant is that nobody knows what a podcast consultant is.
Right.
So
true.
We're creating this terminology that I can't even hashtag in LinkedIn. So I'm creating my own hashtag following, or at least searchable term that I'm hoping in 18 months' time is a search term that all of a sudden they're going to find a bunch of stuff for hashtag podcast consultant or hashtag podcast consultants. So I'm just building up that collateral, at least in LinkedIn. But I did have the understanding of what social media that I need to be a part of. And for this, me targeting businesses, it is LinkedIn. So again, that's that piece of understanding the social media landscape, what business, what career you're moving into, and know where you need to be with it.
Right.
Such. So, just in the past 12 months, studies are reporting that more than 50% of adults have listened to at least one podcast over the week. This past week. So we're at the tipping point now. The people know what the term podcast is. Now they may have heard about it. They've heard on radio. They've heard a TV show talk about it. Or, these terms are starting to pop up in pop culture.
Right.
And made fun of on Saturday Night Live.
Yes,
all sorts of stuff. So, people understand or have at least heard the term podcast, but now it's to the point that businesses who are beginning the process of starting a podcast, not knowing that they need a consultant.
Right.
Because they jump in and they realize this is a bit more work than writing a blog because of everything around it. They need a consultant to advise them on best practices or best ways to reach their intended goals with the podcast that they want to publish. They may not even know what their goals are. Right. To do what they need to do with it. So, again, I'm creating this whole new world of consultant that they may not even know that they need it yet.
Right. Well, and when you think of it, we were sort of the guinea pig.
Somewhat, for sure.
We learned this as we went along, and when we started out the Successful Encore Career Podcast, it was, what's a podcast, Brett? Right. That was my question. So that's good. But that all goes back into, for our listeners, are you looking at doing a career change? Do your research.
Yes,
do
correct.
your homework.
For sure.
Do your night school, because you will be better prepared for that change. You can't just suddenly leap.
Right. And you'll understand yourself better if you are ready for that career path.
Right. Well, so talking still a little bit more about self-employment, doing an encore career and working for another company is one thing, but to actually jump and create your own company is a whole new ball game. Do you see the creation of your company as an important step for your family, community, and even in terms of your other colleagues and all?
Yeah. Yes. I think if older adults take a step back and get comfortable with the realization that becoming an entrepreneur or an independent contractor, whatever terminology you want to put to it, is actually taking control of your encore career path. I mean, it could actually be less resistance to moving on because we've never seen this kind of economy that supports just that.
Right.
And it's, I don't want to call it a gig economy. It's not that. It's you're choosing a career path that you're controlling your own destiny, that you're paying yourself. And you're never too old to do that. I don't think you ever are. So, my goal is to continue to grow and work with other independent contractors to lift some of the load off my day, of course, so I can focus on my business. Audio, video editors, editing transcripts, social media and such. But additionally, what I'm doing is helping businesses grow their business, though. So those businesses that are growing are hiring. So if we're setting the table that they should be addressing older adults to hire via Employment for Seniors, via Successful Encore Career, that lifts the boat all the way around.
Wonderful. I hadn't put that together, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that is initially why when I was working with the radio station group here is working with Employment for Seniors, because if that audience that the radio station geared toward was older adults.
Right.
So in the back of my mind going, well, if I can help a nonprofit that actually helps older adults find jobs, then I might actually be helping my listenership.
Right.
Have a better economic base because they're working.
There you go.
And they can buy more of the products that I'm
you're advertising.
selling. But that changed over time, of course.
Right.
That wasn't the total reason I joined Employment for Seniors on the board at the time, but it made sense to me.
I think you were the man up, right?
Yeah. Ultimately it was that, but it helped me justify it though too, that I was helping an organization do good, but it benefits a lot of people and it can benefit me maybe too. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, I think one thing Employment for Seniors does is it gives us an incredible networking opportunity.
You bet.
Maybe the network isn't always there, but boy, we have the opportunity to create it. That's for sure.
For sure.
So I'm always interested in clients' educational background, and I've asked many folks who have sat at our table and talked about their Encore career about, what are the types of training or lifelong learning that they've pursued over the years. You mentioned your night school where you were teaching yourself. Are there other kinds of things that you did?
I think the biggest turning point I had was attending the podcast industry's largest conference called Podcast Movement. I'd never plopped down that kind of money before in regards to a multiple day conference and a hotel stay. But I knew going to this would be what would either convince me that was the right direction to go or make some other kind of career choice. Because I was at that point that I needed to do something else. I was getting bored with radio, with what I was doing in radio, and there was nothing else for me to do there. Lots of signs were turning to that point. So that was back in the summer of 2016. It took place in Chicago. The family came along and turned into a mini vacation for them as well too while I was at the conference. But that conference changed and confirmed everything about the next steps I needed to take. That drive home, I was on cloud nine.
Nice.
It was the atmosphere I wanted to be a part of. I loved the energy. I loved where this whole industry was going. I can remember the drive back from Chicago. Couldn't wait to start mapping out the process of moving out of this 35 plus year career. I knew it was right. So I think taking those steps, sometimes whether it's a conference, whether it's just a network event or you go to a chamber event, anything can be that turning point.
Right.
That all of a sudden you talk to the right people or you meet the right person and it clicks. You have to be out there.
Somebody said something to me just earlier today that baby boomers, and you're not a baby boomer, but from that are those of us.
I'm an old Gen Xer.
You're an old Gen Xer, not quite a baby boomer, but that we tend to be lone wolves because we have been used to being out there and hit the grind, do it. And so what happens is that we end up overthinking what we want to do, where we want to be, and can't make decisions because we're overthinking. So just getting outside of your own box opens up those opportunities.
Right. And listening to people around you, giving you compliments and giving you those little cues that you're good at that. And really taking it to heart, not just fluffing it off. I think we're of a generation that we kind of don't take those compliments very well, and we kind of joke them off and such, but we need to turn that and go, thank you, I appreciate that, and just say thank you, but let it resonate.
Right, right. So my next question, I took this right off your website, where Circle270Media, your company, provides a wide array of services to clients, including content marketing, content creation, audio production, recording, and broadcasting. So why don't you give our audience an overview of your work and how you assist clients sort of cut through all that gobbledygook I just said.
Yes, exactly. Well, it begins with a one-on-one meeting with the client when they're interested in the podcast. A lot of it is because it's so murky and so convoluted. As I just mentioned, there's so many moving parts to this.
And let me just also specify, your clients could be private industry, could be other nonprofits, it could be government offices, really any organization.
Yes, correct. I really have evolved even the last 3 years. When I first started, it was going to be working with independent podcasters, maybe helping them find sponsorships, maybe creating a network of independent podcasters. And an independent podcaster being, you could classify as a brother, sister, or two sisters, or a couple of friends just opening up mic and they want to talk about movies. Is there an opportunity for them to monetize that podcast? I was looking at it as, hey, I can bring my background, help them, teach them, monitor them how they can sell their podcast, and help them consult that way. That didn't come to be, but made the shift into branded podcasts, working with businesses that actually are using this tool for content marketing. Lifting their brand, lifting their business without being a 30-minute sales pitch, but it's that lifestyle around the podcast, or just that a podcast wants to be created around the business, that they just want to interview movers and shakers in our community and represent themselves as we are on the pulse, that sort of thing. So, as I mentioned, I talk with them one-on-one. We go over questions like, what's the purpose of the podcast? What does your business have to offer via podcast? And what's its impact? I really make sure that they're understanding what this podcast is going to do, can do, and the time it's going to take.
Right.
So, who's going to be hosting? Will the podcast include guest interviews? Who's the target audience? Does the podcast focus on B2B, business to business, or business to consumer, or both? It can. How often do you see each episode being published? What does the success of a podcast look like for your business, as well as how you're going to measure the key performance indicators? They're called KPIs, or return on investment, or sometimes it's called return on influence.
Oh, right.
Because you can use your podcast to influence and network and such. So there's a lot of different pieces, and it's so flexible.
Right.
That's why those questions are there, is to really make the client think, why do you want to do this? Doesn't mean it can't evolve, as we've done with the Successful Encore career, over time, but where does it going to start? What do you want to get accomplished? And, then I customize a plan for that business based in part on the answers and other things that come up, because usually once you start to get them thinking, they just start rolling with it. And that's all vital information. I mean, the technology and how podcasting works is, like I mentioned, just a bit murky and mysterious for most people, and it doesn't help. There's a lot of misinformation available when you Google search the topic. Everybody's brother's got an idea of what equipment to buy, what to this, that, and the other. My main job is to keep our clients on task, on focus, delivering the message that resonates with their podcast listeners. That's the bottom line. That's what it's all about. You
had mentioned to me once a while ago that just like new businesses close down quickly, podcasts close down quickly.
Sure they do.
If there isn't some consistency, you can't do it just because you want to do it. It has to have a purpose.
Yeah, I usually help them put together a 12-month plan.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter the publishing frequency. It's put it on paper. What do you want to do each month? Because especially if you want to bring in guests, and you would love to talk to them in May, they may not be available in May.
Right.
But they'll be available in March.
Right.
So you hook up an interview with them in March, but you don't publish that episode till May.
Which we do on a regular basis.
You bet.
Right.
So it's that game plan of keeping you on task and making sure that you know what topics are going to be talked about. Team members are going to be a part of it. It starts to gel when you start to do that. And that's not earth-shattering. That's what you do with social media marketing, planning, anything. You put it on a calendar, and it's all in pencil, but at least here's the roadmap.
Well, when we started ours, the first thing we did was sit down and say, what are the topics we could talk about? And then started actually looking to see, okay, who could we talk to about these topics? I don't know, that list may have been 2 pages long, and I think it's still a page long, because there's just, every time we take something off, we put something else back on there.
Correct.
We've always got new ideas.
Or we kind of dive even deeper
Right.
into topics that we know that, okay, we've covered that enough times, but can we cut that even more? Oh, we have a good person now that can talk about it at a different way of talking about it, because
Right.
you never know what conversation is going to click with a listener. There's
Right.
not enough ways to talk about resumes.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You can talk to tons of people, but each one has their own presentation of it, and it may click different with a listener.
Right, right. Well, what's not on my notes that I wanted to make sure I remembered to tell our listeners is that Brett just won an award from AARP Ohio called Excellence in Disrupt Aging for bringing technology to employment for seniors, particularly the podcast program. So
Yes.
applause
Well,
to Brett and all his work.
Thank you for nominating me.
Well,
it was interesting talking to them about this award, that it's part of a series of 7 or 8 that they can give out every year, but they don't give this one out every year. It just depends on the applicants.
Right.
So that was kind of neat too. It's like, oh, okay, this isn't one of those you have to fill a bucket.
Right.
That,
right.
Which our knowledge of award giving
Yes.
through our legacy event, I thought, boy, that's a comfortable zone to be in. That
Yes.
you have, again, I think it was 7 awards that they could give out. It's like, well, it depends on who applies. You can kind of match them to that, and you may not have Disrupting Aging award for maybe 3 years.
Right. Well, and I was really excited because Disrupt Aging is the name of the book that the national CEO of AARP wrote, Joanne Jenkins, called Disrupt Aging, which is a great book, particularly if you're in your late 40s, 50s, because it's really helping you to prepare to do that jump into the 60s. And so it's just got some great ideas and talks about, we're here and it doesn't matter how old we are.
Yeah.
We're going to do the things we want to do.
And I did a little bit of research on the Disrupt Aging concept on AARP's website, and they're really looking at it more than just even older adults. They have some pictures of younger, young teenager, or not young teenagers, but younger adults, let's put it that way, that they're disrupting their concept of what a Gen X or Gen Y or Gen Z is.
Very true.
Every
Very
generation has its stigma.
Right.
And I think that's a great example that there are people at the forefront, whatever age and whatever age group, that they're breaking those stereotypes.
Right.
And that's neat.
Yeah, which we do with our age-friendly Columbus Franklin County program.
Right.
If it's good for a senior, it's good for a millennial, because everybody needs to have a bus shelter if
Right.
they're riding the bus.
Yeah,
So
correct.
yeah. So again, congratulations
Well,
on your
thanks.
award. So
Yeah.
the last question that I always ask our guest: what are the top 3 or 4 steps that you feel our listeners can utilize should they be considering a career change and taking them into self-employment or into a new encore career? And what should they consider as they venture into this new career journey?
Yeah. Number 1, I'd say believe in yourself. Know that you have the abilities to do what you really want. Really take a look at your accomplishments and recognize even the smallest of them. Know that it's worth something to somebody, and just putting them all together, you'll get where you need to go. 2, absorb and research as much information as you can about what you're moving into. But don't let that be a stumbling block that I haven't read enough, I haven't listened enough. There's going to be a tipping point there that you're going to be reading the same thing over and over, and you're hearing the same thing over. And I
Right.
think that's probably the point where you kind of go, I've got a good handle on this. I would at the same time, there's a series by the author Jen Sincero. Read or listen to these, and don't be offended by the titles of these books, but they are great. Her series, You Are a Badass. You are a badass at making money, and you're a badass every day. It's a phenomenal series.
How do you spell the author's name?
Sincero. They are great. In fact, the audiobook may be a better way to absorb than reading the book, but it depends on if you're a reader or a listener. They are common sense types of scenarios to help you get through the struggles you're going to realize moving from working a 9-to-5 job to taking it on your own. And one good example, not example, but I'm going to state what she says in there, that you're going to have, and this is one of my points too, is you're going to have the naysayers. You're going to have people in your family and your close network of friends just downplay that you're moving. They're saying, oh, you can't do that. You can't do that. Guess what? You need to move them out of your circle.
Right.
Because they're only going to bring you down, and they're only going to plant self-doubt. They're not part of your success anymore.
Right.
You can still love them from afar, but they're not part of your game plan anymore.
Right. You've been, I always tell clients, you've been powerful for years. There's no reason you can't continue to be powerful.
And I give a selfless plug too. Go back and listen to Encore Career Podcasts. Really, there are some gems. We put a lot of heart and soul into this series. And there's a lot of good stuff there that wherever you are in your journey, there's a topic there that will help you. It wasn't always, not all of our episodes are about finding a job. It could be some that are when you found it already, to just be a better person overall. Networking. You can take those networking episodes and still use even when you're beyond finding that new career. It's still tips to network.
Doesn't matter whether you're interviewing with an employer for a job or you're interviewing potential new clients for your company. Right. So those kinds of skills are always.
Number three, talk to people you trust about your ideas. Stay away from the naysayers, as I mentioned. You know who they will be. Don't even tell them.
Right.
Just do it. Right. This step creates accountability. Keeps you moving, because what's going to happen is you talk to them about your idea, and they're going to, the next time they see you, they're going to bring, hey, how's that idea going?
Right.
And if you don't want to answer them, I'm still at the same stage. The more people you tell, the more likely you're going to keep moving.
Is that why I'm an introverted thinker? I don't tell anybody anything.
But I found that to be true, and I made a concerted effort to tell people that I was those that I could trust, because I was still full-time employed. But those that I knew that would keep me to task and move me forward, I told.
Right. And your family's been really supportive.
Right.
Shout out to the Johnson family. They've been incredibly supportive. So.
And then create the business name, get the LLC, create the business cards, and create a bank account. Do it.
Oh my gosh, yes.
When you start making money, that money has to have a home.
Right.
It's the natural flow of things. And again, you're going to hear that from Jen Sincero. I'm a total believer in it. If you make the money, it's got to go somewhere.
Right.
So just get off your butt and do it. And as I always tell myself when I get a client payment in the mail, respect the check.
Absolutely.
Respect the check. Don't let it lie around.
Oh my gosh.
Deposit that bad boy in that account. And
every penny counts.
Right, it does. And then you're making money and you're moving forward, and that it just continues on. But those would be the 4 things I would suggest.
Absolutely. Oh, that's fabulous. That is fabulous. Brett, thank you.
Sure,
this has been an incredible podcast today. And as Brett said, we have other Encore careers that we've talked to. I think you're probably not the first to go into their own business, but I think we've put a lot more emphasis this time on creating your business. But we have other Encore careers who've gone to work for other companies, and
there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Right, and Encore Career is not a magic name either. No. You don't have to be doing something spectacular to be an Encore career. You know, a retired school teacher can go and work in customer service at another location, and that's their Encore career because that's what they wanted to do.
Correct.
So don't get hung up by the jargon, by the craziness. So anyway, thank you to all of our listeners today for joining us. Brett, thank you for today's podcast focusing on your own Encore career, as well as the support and assistance you've provided to make the Successful Encore Career podcast an award-winning program.
You're welcome.
So thanks to listeners. And if you have any questions or ideas on our podcast program, contact Employment for Seniors at www.employseniors.org or email at info@employseniors.org. Thanks again.